Hello and a very warm welcome to the Adventure Show, and this month we have a real gruelling event for you, the Highland Cross, 50 miles coast to coast across Scotland. That's 20 miles running and 30 miles in the saddle. It goes through some of the most beautiful and remote places in the Scottish Highlands, starting here at Kintail, on through Glen Affric and finishing in Beauly.
However, this event isn't just about the race. Each year the selected teams come here to both compete and raise money for local charity, with last year a whopping £174,000 being raised. And all that money will be well earned, with the race taking over 3 hours even for the fastest and up to 10 for the slowest.
Also in this month's Adventure Show, we'll be seeing Scotland from a whole new perspective at the X-Scotia Paragliding Championships. Finding out how to canoe in a Canadian double with Lindsay Cannon.
That's brilliant! Nearly over there!
And heading into the mountains with hill walking expert Cameron McNeish. But all that's later, so make sure you stay with us right now to that epic coast-to-coast race. It's 6 in the morning and the first task is to get the bikes loaded and off to the changeover point at Glen Affric. Over 700 competitors have signed up for this 25th Highland Cross. So, why did they do it?
Just wouldn't miss it for anything.
It's a good social event.
You can't miss the cross.
The best thing about it is when you hear a pipe band at the end for the corner. That's the most exciting bit for me. The last mile when you go around that corner.
I'm from Azerbaijan, so for the last 8 years I've travelled over from Baku, Azerbaijan. And this is my 21st year.
There's people I see here that I only see at Highland Cross.
The thing that really strikes me is just the sense of community about it. Just terrific sense of community between the people taking part.
So with the bikes sorted, it's time to get the humans marshalled. They've been taken by bus to the starting point at Kintail, 50 long miles away. Many of the competitors are regulars, but what keeps bringing them back year after year?
I like the fact that it's really focused on raising money for charity. And I think that's really important to the organisers that happens, because they've raised over £1 million now over the years. I think it's just a fantastic thing to do.
Well, I've done it about 8 times now, this will be my 8th one. But I think the attraction for me is I need a target every year, if not I wouldn't do anything.
For some, they come back year after year to the Highland Cross, but for some, it's their first time, and this is your first Highland Cross.
Yep.
Feeling a bit concerned?
I was a bit nervous, yes, definitely. Yep.
Have you done anything like this before?
I took up running maybe not last year, year before. I was kind of, I was 22 stone, so I took up running. I lost just under 8 stone.
That's incredible. Now there's a big difference between suddenly going on a diet then to do 50 miles in a Highland Cross.
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? It's something to do,
So this is it. We've arrived in Kintail. Final preparations are complete and they're ready for the off. And they've even got a job for me.
If you go slowly on the way past Doogie Boycott says he'll sign your running vest for you, a small fee. 10,
So,
9, 8,
last 10 seconds before
7,
the Highland
6,
Cross, and here
5,
we go.
4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Just over 700 competitors this year, 2008, a gruelling course, 20 miles running as they bunch up at the start, then 30 miles in the saddle. At this point, a lot of adrenaline going on. No matter, just get nice and relaxed, keep yourself calm, don't use up too much energy, and just set the mind, set the body. People of all ages and shapes. Some doing it to try and win, some doing it just to try and raise an absolute fortune for charity. In excess of 700 competitors are on their way to the Highland Cross 2008. You can enter this event even if you're not keen on the running. Today, around a third of the competitors have opted to walk this section of the race. They set off 2 hours ago and are already well into some of the most stunning scenery Scotland has to offer.
It's a beautiful day for some torture in the hills. Can't beat it.
Absolutely brilliant day.
looking at the pools and the deer and everything. It's just lovely. So really good. Cheers. That's great. Absolutely magic.
Today, the competitors are taking part for the sheer fun of it. But none of them will know this landscape as well as shepherd Ian Thompson, who has spent a lifetime in the shadows of the Five Sisters of Kintail.
There are three major glens, two of them further north from here, Glen Affric and Glen Trossachs. And in my day, when I was shepherding in Trossachs, everything was under sheep, and cattle too, of course. And a lot less people, very few people. So there's been a dramatic change in my lifetime in these glens. It's good to see so many folk in the glen. We only maybe saw 2 or 3 people in a year.
There's a strong community feeling to this race, with many competitors coming from around this area. Perhaps that's because of how it all began, an idea thought up by members of the local fire brigade.
It started out as a joke to raise money for the Fire Service Benevolent Fund, and the original idea was we could lay hold of a couple of minibuses and a lorry. So we thought 8 teams, 3 people a team, 24 people, a bit of a hoot. First year I think we had 141 took part. People really have just got in behind it, and it's rolled on and on from that.
20 miles running and 30 miles on the bike is a fairly stern test.
It's a fairly stern test, but the thing is, it's actually achievable for a person of reasonable fitness. You'll have the oldest man on the course is in his 70s, the youngest is 18. You can take it at your own pace. There's a team who come in every year and they stop and have a picnic. One year they took fishing rods. On the other end, you've got international athletes. Yeah. It's a community of people who share the challenge.
Well, I'm certainly at the picnic end of the scale. Meanwhile, the leading runners are heading up to the high point of the race. The front runner at present is David Rogers from Fort William, a previous winner of the Ben Nevis race. He's an expert in this discipline.
This was my first introduction to running. This is what got me into it long before I did the Ben race. So this is what got me going. This was my first ever race. I'm usually quite good in a run, but there's a few good runners in this year, so it might be a different story.
Only a short distance behind, currently in second place, is 29-year-old Hugh McInnes from Edinburgh. And in third at the moment is Henry Blake from Dingwall. He only started running 5 years ago. His inspiration to beat his dad.
The fourth time I've done it, and last time I did it I was second. That was 2 years ago. I missed it last year just through injury, and thought it was going alright this year. I knew I was feeling quite fit. Just steady as she went.
Leading the way for the women right now is Rona Buchan from Aberdeen, but pushing her all the way is 41-year-old Sandra Brett.
I just do a bit of running, but I hadn't trained properly for this. It's absolutely beautiful scenery. It sure beats running around Dundee, I'll tell you that. Really, really good when you're passing walkers and everybody else, and they just kept saying well done, and really, really good. It's a fantastic race.
Another lady coming along here, looks like second lady. Who's this? What's your name?
Sandra Brett.
Well done, Sandra.
Thank you.
There's over 1,000 feet of ascent from sea level to the high point of the run, and today the heat is beginning to take its toll.
The worst bit, I suppose, is the climb up the hill, isn't it? It's a bit hot. So here comes the excuses.
We like it's very hot, and I prefer it when it pours with rain. I like suffering in the rain and the wind, and then it's a true adventure.
This is my 10th year, and unfortunately today I've got to walk it. I've got a bit of flu. I'm actually the property manager for the National Trust here, so I actually manage all the trail that goes all the way through to Glen Affric. So it's my back door. This is what we call the Alt Granda, which is the steepest section of the whole route. And after this, it's really down to the watershed, and you're really falling all the way down into Beauly. Behind us here, we've got the Five Sisters, famous Five Sisters of Kintail. So it is really spectacular scenery.
Oh look, they're all so jolly coming up the hill.
Fantastic area. That's part of what really attracts me, is to get to enjoy the scenery as well as exercise myself.
It's available to everyone. You can see people here walking. It's everyone's personal challenge, and it's this great journeying thing coming from the west coast all the way through to the east coast, which I think makes it so special. It becomes an addiction.
Good man, well done. What's your name?
David Rogers.
David Rogers, well done, David.
And at the High Bialach at the top of Alt Grand, the first man through is David Rogers. Hugh McInnes is just a minute behind him, and Henry Blake's pushing hard in third place. But right now we're leaving the runners as they start that long descent to their waiting bikes in Glen Affric. We've travelled south to join Cameron McNeish as he heads into a land of wild glens and rugged hills. This is where the Highlands meets the Lowlands and is within an hour's travel of where most people in Scotland live.
I'm in the heart of the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, beside the Ladard Burn, which flows down from its source high on Benvenue, the hill that I'm going to be climbing today. This spot is known as Scott's Pool, and the story is that Sir Walter Scott would come here and work in his notes for his great novels like Waverley, Rob Roy and Lady of the Lake. And just above me on the burn, above the waterfall, there's another pool known as Helen's Pool. And this is where the great Scottish hero Rob Roy MacGregor apparently courted his wife Helen Campbell. And if you're of a romantic disposition and you're currently courting, then you too can come to Ladard Farm and they'll organise your wedding for you on exactly the same spot. Prior to the Jacobite rebellions, the Trossachs, although only 20 miles or so from Glasgow, were kind of sequestered from the laws of the day. And the clansmen who lived north of the Highland line had their own form of self-regulation, had indeed their own culture. And as a statistical account of the time suggests, they were quite keen on frequent predatory excursions upon their neighbours in the lowlands. And amongst those clansmen, of course, was Rob Roy MacGregor himself, who did enjoy the odd bout of cattle reaving upon the farms of the south. But after Culloden, things began to change and the Highlands began to open up, and artists and poets and writers were enticed into the Highlands. And amongst them was the young Sir Walter Scott, who really did romanticise this area with his tales of Rob Roy and the Lady of the Lake. And indeed today I think we could safely suggest that Sir Walter Scott is probably the father figure of modern Scottish tourism. The route from the Ladard Farm to the summit of Benvenue really couldn't be simpler. You just follow the burn up to this high Bealach with Benvrec on one side, Benvenue on the other side, and voila, there's your route to the mountain. The name Benvenue actually means Hill of Caves, although some people have suggested it might mean the small hill, but I'm not very sure about that. At 727 metres above sea level, the mountain isn't exactly diminutive. But I quite like the Hill of Caves because it ties in quite nicely with a feature just below me down here, Corrian and Usican, the Corrie of the Urisks, or the Goblins. And there's quite a nice old legend that every year the goblins of Scotland would gather in this corrie down below me here in a recess on the north side of Benvenue. And in 1806, a Dr. Graham wrote a book where he described goblins as a kind of lubbery supernatural who could be encouraged to perform the jobs of drudgery on a farm. So it's quite a nice thought to think of goblins being used as hired hands. But it also ties in with another Walter Scott stories. The island that you see in Loch Catchin below me, the island to the left, is Ellen Morach, which in The Lady of the Lake was the stronghold of one Roderick Dhu. And the heroine of The Lady of the Lake, Ellen Douglas, escaped from the island with her father and made their way up onto the mountain through the corrie of the Goblins. And I think it goes to show one thing, even Sir Walter Scott, one of the most original of our writers, leaned fairly heavily on the local legends that had probably been told at firesides for generations before he even appeared. The Trossachs have always been known as the Highlands in miniature. And I think there is a sense that many of the Highland landscape features have been compressed here into this one small area. But I rather like the notion that Sir Walter Scott's pen portraits of the Trossachs have become generic of the Highlands as a whole. And if there are two lines of his work that really remind me of this particular Trossachs area, it's these. So wondrous wild the whole might seem, the scenery of a fairy dream.
When you head out into the hills, what's on your feet is fundamental to your enjoyment. And there's a whole new generation of lightweight boots on offer. So Desiree Wilson's joined our gear expert Chris Townsend to get the lowdown.
We've got a really good selection of boots here. How do I go about choosing a pair?
Well, the first thing is the shape and the fit. Fit comes before anything else. If we look at two of these boots, that one's quite broad and squat. That one's much longer and thinner. They're not going to fit the same feet. So in that sense, it doesn't matter which one is the better boot, neither of them is. So you've got to get a good fit, because if they don't fit you, they're worse than useless. Sure. So that's the first criteria. But then, of course, you've got to look at the performance. Even if they fit, boots are no good if you're going to slip, if you're going to twist your ankle and so on. Obviously, the sole, the grip is really important. If you're going into the hills, it's got a grip on wet rock, wet grass, gravel, scree, etc. You want a fairly deep tread, and you want a variegated pattern. Straight lines across are no good. You need this sort of complex pattern. There's a different one there. The next thing you look at is ankle support. People tend to think this is what gives you ankle support. It isn't. You can see this is fairly low ankle, in fact. Some of them are higher, but it's still quite soft. That is your ankle support. You need a proper, what's called a heel cup, which is hidden inside most boots, but it's hard. And when your heel's in there, it holds it in position. A lot of boots have a waterproof lining. Now, waterproof linings are great when it's cold. Some people love them because, otherwise their feet feel cold and clammy. If, like me, your feet tend to run hot, in warm weather, they can be terrible. You end up with really sweaty feet, damp socks. Any good boot for walking, and it's important here to realise we're talking about walking, not climbing or mountaineering. This is not, front pointing up ice falls or whatever. Should flex with your feet here, and that means across there. If they flex in the middle, some cheap boots you can bend in half. Well, that's no use. Your foot does not flex in the middle. But again, people's feet flex at different points.
So, Chris, how do all these boots compare?
Start with these. This is the Keen Targi. It's got the solid toe bumper and heel, a good grip. There's an optional waterproof membrane. It's a fairly substantial, chunky boot, but still quite light, and weight is an important factor. It's got leather here, which is good for wear, and fabric here. This looks completely different, because this is, if you like, a traditional. This is your little brown leather boot. Leather upper boots will always outlast a fabric mixed boot, but it tends to be a bit heavier. And it's quite stiff. If you prefer the traditional approach and a stiffish boot, that one's quite nice. If we look at this one, this is the High-Tech Ridge, which is another boot that's got a waterproof membrane. Very modern looking, mixture of suede and leather and fabric. This one particularly has got very thick shock absorption, which will be good if you feel sore feet, and on stones tends to mean you don't get quite so much feel on the ground because you've got more between you. And again, that is really quite stiff. This one is amazingly light and also amazingly flexible. It's much thinner sole, but it's still got the toe cap and the solid heel and a good grip. This version does not have a waterproof breathable lining, but there's a version called the Nitro that does, so you have the option there. This will be very breathable and comfortable in hot weather. And we have another very light boot, the Innovate Rock Light. It's quite flexible, but it's got the solid toe and heel. It's got more of a running shoe look rather than a traditional boot look like that, and a sole that grips well.
And how about the ones that I've got on my feet?
Well, these are the Scarpa ZG40 ladies.
It's quite a high ankle boot. It's a modern styling, but it's still mostly leather rather than being leather and fabric, which suggests it will last well. If they're comfortable and they fit, they're good boots.
So Chris, do you think we could give each of these boots a mark out of 10?
Yes, with the proviso that fit is so important, and they are different fits, that I'm not saying that any of these will fit everybody else, and they're all good boots. I think these ones are excellent, very comfortable. I would certainly give these 9 out of 10. The little brown boots, it's a bit heavier I think than it needs to be for 3 season and a bit stiffer. It wouldn't be my first choice by any means, 7. And these ones, well the weight's better than those, but oh dear, for me that's far too stiff. Well again I'd say 7. Now these ones, beautifully light, really flexible, a very comfortable boot, so I'd go for 9 again for that. The ones you're wearing, which seem pretty good, I can't really check the stiffness easily, I would say 8 for those. And these ones as well, nice and flexible, very light. Possibly not everyone's taste in styling, but I think they're very good. 9 for those.
Fantastic.
But now it's time for something different. We're taken to the skies for a brand new event in the Scottish paragliding calendar.
It's the first time we've done this event, so we're trying to learn. So any feedback you can give us to help us try and improve would be really, really appreciated. But the most important thing is for all of you and all of us to have fun, fly safe and enjoy the competition.
The X-Scotia is held over 2 days, but some of the very best pilots may complete the course in 1 marathon session. The event is based around Loch Tay in rural Perthshire, and competitors fly from 3 surrounding mountains, Mealnam Tarmachan, Ben More and Ben Vorlich. But there's a catch. They have to race up the hills with all their gear before they can fly off, and each competitor must be entirely self-sufficient, carrying everything they need to survive both on land and in the air.
Once you've left here, you have left here and the task will be valid until it finishes. So in that respect, you need to make your own decision. If you perceive anything that appears cunimish, then take appropriate action. In that respect, you are free flying because we don't have an adequate communication system to communicate that to you.
The start and finish point of the event is Lochern Head, and one of the few rules is that no one can be airborne after 10 p.m. The estimated distance is 62 kilometres, and they must fly off those 3 Munros. And this is a hardcore event. The competitors will be sleeping out, and some might even be tempted to walk through the night to get an early morning flight off a summit. Day 1 of the race, and 27 hardy souls make their final preparations for the long, heavily laden trudge up the hills, before, hopefully, the reward of some great flying. And the skill isn't just in the paragliding. The competitors choose which order they'll climb the hills in.
We've got very light winds today, so certainly to start with, there's not going to be much flying. The first turn point, the one behind us just here, is the closest, so some competitors I think will probably be planning on running up and getting that one, coming back down and going along to one of the second turn points and trying to get there for when the best flying conditions happen.
We're just going to head along, and there's a path that goes up to Ben More, so follow the path up, and hopefully it should be working by the time we get up there. It's going to launch off and hopefully get some distance before we land.
Oh, this is a steep hill. This is the uphill bit. Yep.
I've now got a revised strategy. I'm trying to get to Ben More, so hopefully get some flyable conditions from Ben More. And I know a lot of people are going along the road. I'm just thinking I'm going to walk up the back here and hopefully go over the area towards the back. Find out if it works later on.
I see there's some cloud coming in, so this might clag us down and may end up having to walk further down the hill before we can get off. But fingers crossed anyway.
We expect the best weather for flying today to be sometime between 2 and 5 o'clock this afternoon. So the canny competitor is going to be the one that gets themselves into the best position to fly, because the further you can fly, the more efficient that is and the better chance you've got of winning the event. I think we've got some racing snakes who've turned up, some pretty fit and keen guys, obviously trained, carrying really light kit. And we expect, I would look at them and expect the first competitors potentially to be back late tonight, sort of 9, 10, 11 o'clock. Certainly the weather is starting to break now, so we'd expect the thermal activity to improve. So I think there's a good chance of some reasonable flying today. Some of the fit ones get themselves into a good position to take advantage of the good flying conditions later on. I think we could see somebody back in goal later on today. We've got, 27 competitors here, off and running. Now what we've got to do is make sure that we get 27 people back at the end of the day, all of having a good time.
My plan for this morning didn't go very well, and now I'm running a bit behind schedule. I'm pushing to get up Mealnam Tarmachan before daylight ends.
We'll stop tonight somewhere on the hill, early tomorrow morning up Ptarmigan, and see how we get on, really. If it works up there in the easterly, that'll be fine, but if not, probably fly down here and have another beer before I head home tomorrow night, to be honest.
We haven't heard from people for about sort of 5 or 6 hours. Then we'll probably put a call out on the radio to them, ask the pilots if anyone's seen them. But generally, unless people aren't back by 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon and we haven't heard from them, that's when we'd start to get really worried.
We've got 3 main groups of actual flyers. One big group who seem to be stuck on Ben Moor at the moment. Another group stuck at sort of Balquhidder's area, and one group who are heading up the road to Killin.
And as the light begins to fade, competitors weigh up their day's achievements and work out how much more they can fit in before setting up camp.
Got a flight down to the valley and the mountain just before Ben Moor. And just a nice one into the valley, about a few clicks down the road, and then packed up, started walking. When I actually got to the top, it was all clagged in and the weather cleared just in time for the flight, but you can see the odd pilot flying as well, so it's nice seeing that. It's good, but tiring.
It's becoming clear that the leading racers place as much emphasis on tactics as they do on the actual flying.
It's 7:15 on Saturday night. We're looking up at the summit of Ptarmigan, which is turn point 2, which we've always known was going to be the crux of the whole event, or the whole of Saturday anyway. We knew that if we could get to the summit of Ptarmigan with enough time to fly off, then that gave us the whole night to walk back and get set up for Vorlich in the morning. The real fast guys, of course, have done Vorlich already and Ben Moor, so if they can get off Ptarmigan in time, then they've got the night to walk back and win it.
There's a couple of competitors who've already done Tarmachan. The one who really stands out is Steve Nash. We haven't heard from him since 6 o'clock, and he was in this location here. We suspect he's probably been over the summit of Tarmachan and will be making his way back. And we're kind of expecting him to be back here at the campsite before midnight. There's a couple of other competitors, Paul Myerscough, and he was heading for Ben Vorlich, so he's kind of in the frame as well, to first, second, third place.
So furthest round the route as day 1 draws to a close are Steve Nash and Paul Myerscough. Steve spent the last 3 months training for this event. He's determined to win it. But with Paul on his tail, he'll need to put in as much distance as possible today. With most of the paragliders bedding down for the night, we're travelling north again to find out how those hardy souls in the Highland Cross are getting on.
Come on, spot places.
How was it?
It's tough, but it's nice. Good weather, it's fine. Don't be speeding me.
Welcome back to the Highland Cross, and in just a few minutes the fastest runners will be arriving down this road and relieving their aching legs with a 30-mile bike ride.
But for most, this halfway point still seems a long way off.
Oh God, this bit's almost over. This has been hard coming up here. But yeah, brilliant, really enjoying it. I've got, my boyfriend did it last year, said he absolutely loved it, he's doing it again. And just love this countryside and the exercise, getting out in the fresh air, it's brilliant.
Done it a few times, have you?
19.
19 times?
Yeah.
Go on, just keep moving.
Okay, thank you. Lovely day. Thanks again. Bye.
This is, I think, year 8 for me in this, and it doesn't get any easier, can I tell you. I think I've had one year that I really pushed my training and get round it all in a run, but not this year. It's tough going. Getting it. I'll get there. I know I'll get there, but it's just whether I get there in style or not.
You've been a few times before?
This is the first time.
Yeah, go on.
I've been out, but it was this year.
How did you find the first bit then?
Tough, really tough. Knackered now.
Battered, bruised or broken, or not, there's a smile on most of the faces here today. But things are not going so well for 64-year-old John Brooks.
It started out great, lovely weather and beautiful countryside, but it all went wrong just down the hill when I twisted my knee, which I've been operated on, and decided I couldn't complete the course. I did the thing last year, so I know what's ahead, and I know my knee won't hold up for another 15 miles and then a cycle ride. Quite disappointing.
Well, I'm involved with the mountain rescue team in Kintail. We've just been asked for many years now to provide safety cover for this half of the event. I think the whole idea behind it is fantastic. That they raise enormous amounts of money for really good causes, and being a charity ourselves, the mountain rescue team, we'd like to give them our full backing.
We normally manage to bring in maybe about £30,000 per charity, and then you've a small sort of residue left over that we give to little charities that would have difficulty raising money. But the deal is, if you want to get from the cross, you have to give to the cross, and so you have to turn up with 20 helpers to do a specific job. If you get a vehicle from us, in future years we may phone you up and say, can we borrow your bus on the day? And we've got charities who have got their money from us 10 years ago and they still come back.
Each year the organisers choose 3 charities to be the main beneficiaries of the funds that are raised, and this year Children First are one of the chosen beneficiaries. But in order to earn our keep we have to supply marshals to help. So that's what we're doing here.
It's a great privilege to be able to raise money for these organisations, because many of them just wouldn't get the chance. They're not the big names, they don't appear. And that's what it's about. 2.3.5 million in 25 years.
2 years ago, there was a big, hefty chap was in my team, and he was getting married a month later. So on the wedding invitation, he put, "No presents, please. Donation to the Highland Cross." And he raised 1,100 quid. And luckily, there was a month between the Highland Cross and his wedding.
As the first of the walkers, with the advantage of that earlier start time, begin to arrive at the halfway point, it's not long before the leading runner appears.
Not sure who's out in front yet. It might be David Rogers, who was out in front earlier. It's actually Henry Blake. Done an amazing time in just over 2 hours.
5, 9, 8.
Second and third runners across the line at changeover point are Hugh McInnes and Alistair Thomas, who was the first veteran last year.
And not only first veteran, in 2007, 41-year-old Alistair Thomas was second overall fastest racer. He was put to the post by the smallest of margins.
21 seconds, yeah. I could see him cross the finish line as I was coming down the final 200 yards. It was a good race though. We were together all the way on the bike, so and it was just the last kind of couple of miles, legs just gave up.
Well done.
I tend to go faster in the second half of the race, in the second half of the run, should I say. And then it's survival on the bike. I tend to think that once you get on the bike, it's kind of you'll finish in whatever position you get on the bike in. As long as you're a reasonable bike rider, you should be able to hold your bike position, hold your position once you're on the bike.
You can see lots of runners and walkers coming into the changeover point at the same time, and we mustn't forget that the walkers in this event start 2 hours earlier than the runners.
Well done, well done.
There's David Rogers just through the finishing changeover point now. Is that the worst of it over?
Can't wait to get on the bike, aye. I tired a bit the last few miles there.
That's a really good time that you just did there. How's the heat today?
It's quite warm actually. It's better that than being freezing though.
You looking for a good time on your bike?
Yeah. Aye. Oh, it's a nightmare trying to open the laces.
With just seconds separating the fastest racers, there's still everything to play for.
Thank goodness that's over. That's really hard.
Do you think the biking's going to be a bit easier for you?
Can't be harder.
What's the heat like for you today?
Not too bad. Come on. It'd be nice to sit on the bike.
Is that going to be a rest for you?
Nearly, not quite, but...
You're still smiling anyway.
Trying.
I usually pull in a few on the bike. You get horrible cramps sometimes, so we'll have to see.
But in amongst the thick of it, Sandra Brett has snatched first place for the women. Out on the bike, Henry Blake is powering through the miles. He's well out in the lead. Alistair Thomas is now in second place, having managed to pull away from Hugh McInnes at the changeover point. And 23-year-old Matthew Sullivan from Glasgow is sitting in fourth. In this part of the race, the competitors are relying on machines as well as their bodies. But there's help on hand.
We'd never not send somebody down the road, yeah. We managed to fix everything, or borrow a bike from somebody who's been injured.
It must be quite frustrating for people to have bikes that aren't working when they're just desperate to keep on with the race.
Some of them do get quite worked up about it, but if you can sit them down and just working up where they're there, and they usually calm down enough to get on the bike and go down the road again.
You must get good at fixing bikes really quickly then.
We do. We do feel under pressure at times. It's a touch of the Tour de France thing, It's got to be done in their way. Problem with the gears is a bit of...
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it.
That was an easy fix.
Are you sure now?
Should be fine, yeah.
By now, there's a steady flow of competitors through the changeover point, and the consensus seems to be that this race is definitely not one for the faint-hearted.
Knackered. Quite grueler.
Really hard work.
It's a bit warm, eh?
Is this the first time you've done this?
Third time.
Third time. Easier, harder than the first time?
I was 3 years younger the first time I did it.
How's the run?
Fantastic. No, a doddle. It's all downhill out here from here. And it's just round the corner and we've finished. So, it won't be a problem.
Is that what they've been telling you?
Yeah, I've done it 4 times. So
Okay,
I know it's
you know
not.
what to expect.
Oh, I know it's not. I'm just looking forward to the finish.
How gruelling was the run?
It was fine. I went really slow at the start, maybe a bit too slow, but that tarmac bit at the end has kind of killed my feet a wee bit. But
how are you feeling about doing a 30-mile bike ride?
Pretty scared. I've only been on my bike twice, so this is going to be... it'll be a bit of a break. It's all pretty downhill, I think. So, I want to get on the bike, I think, just to relax the legs. But no, it's been good. Really good fun. Really nice race.
What are you looking forward to most about finishing?
And as these riders start on the long bike ride to Beauly, we're heading skywards again as day one of the X-Scotia paragliding competition draws to a close. Back at Loch Tay, it's 11:20 p.m, and amazingly we have a winner. Steve Nash has just completed the course. He's made it to the summit of all 3 Munros, travelled a total distance of 70 kilometres, and 15 of them were airborne.
Well done, Steve. Congratulations. Fantastic.
Started on Beauly. It was misty at the top, so I had to come down probably about 100 metres. And then I got a glide right out to the road and then run towards Benmore. I decided to go up the side and try and fly, but the lift was really poor, so I ended up running from the best part along the tops then, up to Benmore, flew from the top of Benmore, probably about a third of the way back to Killing then, and then from there just running along the kind of the cycle track all the way through Killing and then Tarmacan.
Steve's made it back in 15 hours and 42 minutes, but he's only just come in first. Paul Myerscough took a longer route, over 85 kilometres, but that included nearly 25 kilometres of flying. He's just 2 minutes behind Steve, and if he could have flown down from his final summit, he might well have taken first place.
I was looking down, I thought it's misty and it's a bit shadowy in the valleys.
We wondered when you said you were on the summit,
there.
we were looking at it thinking you might just get in a flight.
I was in time. I think it was 18 minutes past 9 when I was up there.
Yeah.
And technically you can do it, but
yeah.
I just thought I'm not 100% compass mentors, and it was all getting a little bit sort of shadowy down here.
Yeah.
And,
but if you'd have known,
pushed me luck enough for one day. I think. Home. It's tough. It's really hard going actually. it's funny, nothing prepares you for the events like this. You have it in your mind's eye, or you sort of rattle off all the hills. I mean, I had the first 2 hills done in about half an hour in me sort of head, and then once you've been walking for sort of 3 hours and you're not actually at the bottom of the first one, and then eventually you crack the first one and you come down, you realise how tough the next 2 are going to be.
I knew in the back of my mind that Paul, I'd seen him turning off a track just outside of Killing, and I knew that it was close. As soon as I'd seen him turn, I spent the rest of the time doing mental arithmetic, wondering how fast I could do it against how fast he could do this.
I'm a bit annoyed that the light faded like it did, and it kind of got a bit misty looking down over. Otherwise I could have flown, and I think I'd have been quidsing. I should have, minutes to spare. But no, that's the nature of it, isn't it? I got a good flight along from the West Hill and back right along the valley, so yeah, you win a bit, you lose a bit and stuff, so I can't grumble really.
Well, for me anyway, there was very little lift. I mean, I've just done 4 top to bottoms. Really difficult.
I thought it'd take about half the time, but it's totally unrealistic, and I knew it was, but I was a bit spurred on by the idea of not wanting to sleep on the hill. I thought, oh, my tent's lovely, and I've got a nice little primer stove and cups of tea and all this, or I can sleep in my wing and it's forecast rain.
So, with the first 2 safely back, the rest are still out on the course. You can keep walking all night if you want, but no one is allowed to fly in the dark.
They can only fly tonight until 10 to 10, and then they have to have landed by 10 to 10. And how long they go walking it's up to them. Weather conditions are better for tomorrow, easterly winds. We would hope that the majority of these pilots here in Killeen, if they go up onto Tarmacan, this takes a really nice easterly wind, so we'd expect these people to get some decent flights in, back over Killeen, and drop in down into here somewhere. So yeah, hopefully some good flights tomorrow.
For months, it's been touch and go whether this event would quite literally get off the ground. So far, the weekend has been better than anyone anticipated. There have been a few showers, but also some great flying. Czech competitor and currently leading woman Jitka Polikova now lives in Edinburgh. She hasn't any illusions about the Scottish weather.
We'd expect, not that easy weather and quite a lot of walking. Thinking whether we could fly along the range, but I don't really think there's enough wind on it.
The bit at that end is really quite steep. That might be worth taking a walk up.
I was going up, like about 10 meters per minute or something like that, and then rain came. Then I got 100 meters. So that's nothing really.
It's been a great couple of days for Jitka. With nearly 18 kilometres of flying, she stays ahead to be the first woman to complete the course.
I flew off Tarmacan in the morning because I missed the time just by 5 minutes in the evening. That was quite pleasant, and then we walked to here pretty much, and walked all the way to the top. So didn't feel quite confident touring it, and it was nice. Southeasterly, just flew out and landed nearly here, just beside the water.
So success for Jitka and for the inaugural X-Scotia paragliding race. Out of the 27 competitors who started, every single one managed to get airborne and 7 completed the whole course. Jitka Polikova was the fastest woman and came in joint 6th overall. She finished in a time of 31 hours and 58 minutes. For the men, Mark Leyland came in 3rd in 22 hours and 53 minutes. But the 2 way out in front were Paul Myerscough, who completed the course in just 15 hours and 44 minutes, and a bare 2 minutes ahead of him was Steve Nash. And our congratulations to each and every one of them.
First overall and very first X-Scotia champion, Steve Nash.
Now from the air to water as we join Lindsay Cannon on the banks of the River Tay.
Scotland has some world-class canoeists and kayakers, and earlier this year the Adventure Show came here to Grantully near Aberfeldy to watch them compete. It was fast, furious, dynamic, just brilliant. Now I've got the chance to discover what it's really like to get up close and personal with some white water. but I'm going to be in the capable hands of Stuart Pitt, who's one of our most experienced canoeists. So, Stuart, you're a brave man to take me on. Introduce me to the boat.
Okay, well, this is a canoe slalom Canadian doubles boat. So it's a bit longer than a normal single boat. You've got to have enough space and volume in the boat for two people. It's still very low volume at the back so that you can turn the boat quickly, and if you're both paddling in tandem, doing the right strokes, synchronised with each other, then it's very manoeuvrable. You've got to be really precise on the gates, because to squeeze two bodies through between the poles without hitting them is much harder than when you're just sitting on your own.
Where do I sit, Stuart?
You're in the front, facing that way.
Okay, why in the front?
Well, just the backman can steer the boat a lot more easily, so if you've got someone who's fairly inexperienced, then it's much better to have them in the front.
So, nice and snug here. I'm not going to move around, feel very secure, but that is my big issue. What happens if this tips?
So you pull the strap,
okay.
It'll burst off,
strap,
and then just push out.
Push out. And obviously, because I'm upside down, I'll just drop out.
Yeah, it's much easier when you're upside down.
A big worry, this is my big worry, is if I do tip upside down, I just have this vision of bashing my head off a whole load of boulders onto the water as I go screaming down.
If you hit rocks, usually you slide over them. They've all been washed by hundreds of years of flow, so they're fairly smooth on the top half, and the water's not moving too fast. But I'll make sure we stay upright.
Okay, let's get in the water and then we'll go for it.
Sit.
Paddle,
okay, spray deck. Yep. So if you reach forward, put the paddle as vertical as you can, and then pull, and then out and reach forward again. That's it.
Why did you get into canoeing? What was the attraction for you?
Well, I went a few times with my friends at school, and I just really got completely hooked on it. When I moved to Edinburgh, I got into a canoe club that did whitewater canoeing. I went on trips with them and just had it's fantastic fun. Especially around Scotland, there's so many great rivers to canoe on, fantastic scenery, and you just get the buzz out of whitewater. When you go over there,
yeah.
If you're going to sweep stroke, so instead of having the paddle vertical, you try and keep it horizontal and reach out from the boat. So
it's more like that?
That's it, the sweep stroke.
But it's not just about pleasure for you, because you do compete, and at a very high level. You've been in the Olympics. Why do you enjoy the competition element?
With the training that we do, every training session is different. You can move the gate slightly, and it fundamentally changes all the strokes that you're doing. So the variety is amazing, and just competing on the big races, World Cup Series or World Championships against the best people in the world is fantastic. You get to measure yourself against them.
Gosh, that is so tiring. But really enjoyed that. Let me out the course.
Here we go. We just keep paddling forward.
Woo!
Very good.
Ah! Oh my God! That's brilliant! Nearly over there.
And lean left.
How stable are the Canadians? Because you're kneeling in them, and for me, well, your centre of gravity is quite high.
In a C2, it's much wider than single boats, so that gives you a lot of stability. You've got a paddle on each side with the front man on one side, the back man on the other side. So if you do have a big wobble, then there's one person on the side that you're falling in on that can hold you up. But once it gets beyond a certain point, then you're going to fall in.
Right, by rudder. Wow, look at that! That was absolutely brilliant. I was really apprehensive about capsizing, about getting stuck under the water, but as soon as we started, all my nerves just completely disappeared. Brilliant. Thanks, Stuart.
And just a reminder of how our Scottish paddlers fared in the Olympics. No repeat of last time's success for Campbell Walsh, who finished a disappointing 15th, and sad news too for Fiona Penny, who came in 17th position. But it was quite a different story for David Florence, paddling in the C1 category.
Absolutely brilliant by Florence of Great Britain. He's got to eliminate any mistakes, but he's absolutely flying just as he did yesterday in the qualification rounds. But this is where it counts. A couple of more gates to go for David Florence of Great Britain. One more gate downstream. He's absolutely flying. This is a tremendous time. Florence's finishing time, 178.61. He's in the lead and could get a medal in this C1 final. Brilliant.
And what a fantastic run that was. It wasn't quite enough for gold, which was taken by Michal Martikan from Slovakia, but it was enough to put David Florence into second place and bring back a silver medal for Britain. And now we're heading back to Scotland for the final stages of that gruelling coast-to-coast marathon, the Highland Cross.
Well, I've just driven to the finish point at Beauly, and I can tell you, even by car, it feels like a pretty long way. For the leaders, the end is almost in sight, but for those who are slightly slower, they're yet to get in the saddle.
It's now just over an hour since the first runner came through to the changeover point, and the walkers and runners are coming in thick and fast now. It feels like dozens of people have come in, but looking round at the bikes, there are still hundreds to go, so we still have a lot of runners to arrive at this point. How was it?
Oh, it was hard today, a bit hard. I don't know what time it is. What time is it just now?
It's 2:10. You've done a good time.
3:10.
How did you find it?
Oh, it was very hard today. It was very wet, you see.
It's good to see you in traditional Scottish dress as well.
That's what it should be.
Compulsory.
It's a Highland Cross, isn't it?
1, 2, 0. Number 1. 361.
We've just had John McNally cross the finishing line, age 71, the oldest runner in this event, but he's certainly by no means the last person to reach the changeover point. Hi there, how are you doing? Can I ask you a couple of questions while you're getting changed? How was it?
Hellish.
You've done a great job, right. Well done.
It really was difficult today. I think of all the years, that's probably the most difficult. And that's 11 times, so I should know better.
This is your 11th time?
Yeah.
Not many people of your age managed to
enter,
let alone come.
I was the oldest last year, so I don't know today. So if there's anybody older than 71, they beat me.
What are you most looking forward to when you finish the race?
Pint of Guinness. Yeah.
Out with the front riders, and Henry Blake is still comfortably in the lead, with last year's runner-up Alistair Thomas once again in second place. Behind them there's now a real scrap between Matthew Sullivan and Hugh McInnes, each trying to get into third position. With 20 miles of footwork behind them, it'll seem a long 30 miles by pedal power, and there's a whole array of bikes lined up waiting to head down the road.
I'm just having a wee look at these bikes here, and I'm seeing mountain bikes and road bikes, which I'm finding quite surprising.
Yeah, people have always will do on the bike they've got in their house, because most of them are not being really competitive, but anyway, it's a good day out for them, and it's quite good fun. But in the early days, you get really good runners coming across who are running maybe 2 hours 10, and they'd be down the road on a 3-speed bike. And the Highland Cross is actually a race where it's a bicycle race. You might make up 20 seconds if you're a good runner on the run, but you can make up a lot more time on the bike if you're a good cyclist. If you can do a 1:15 or something down the road, you might take half an hour at a good runner.
Enjoying it? Aye, wonderful.
Presumably the good road bikes will be more advantageous to the competitors than a mountain bike.
Only if you can ride it. If you can ride well and you're fit and fast, then it'll make a difference. If you're not, then it won't make that much difference if you're only ride about 10-15 miles an hour.
The leading riders are now nearing the end of their race. Alistair Thomas from Inverurie is still sitting in second place. He's 3 minutes ahead of the Glaswegian Matthew Sullivan. However, out on his own, well in the lead, Henry Blake is now into the final straight.
So the winner in 2007, Henry Blake from Dingwall, crossing the line in a very impressive time. Big smile on his face. Hands out to some of the competitors. 3 hours, 37, 35 seconds. Pretty impressive.
I thought I was going all right this year. I knew I was feeling quite fit. Just steady as she went. I was actually first off the run, and I didn't see anyone on the bike, so I was first off the run and stayed on my own on the bike.
It must be really hard that way because you don't know who's behind you. You don't know who's...
it. You always know that there's someone chasing you, but you're not quite sure how far back they are.
Yeah.
So I was keeping an eye behind me, but luckily no one came by.
You've just done 50 miles just now, and you have to say you look pretty fresh.
Thank you very much.
Get into another one.
I could do. I've got to cycle back and get the car now.
So 2.5 minutes later, Alistair Thomas, like he did last year, finishes in second place. Alistair, second again.
Second again, I know.
Pretty impressive, I have to say.
Consistent.
Yeah. How was it for you?
The run was a bit frustrating. Beauly just came undone twice, so a bit frustrating. And then I fell in the river.
All right.
So that was a bit annoying, but no, I was pleased overall. Yeah. Probably the run was harder than it should have been. I think pleased with the cycle.
Why was that? Was it the heat or?
The heat, I think. I didn't take on very much water.
Yeah, still overall very pleased. Yeah.
I bet you are. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a pretty impressive time to win it, but you weren't that far behind.
No, I
You were
wasn't.
2.5 minutes outside.
Yeah. No, quite pleased. Yeah.
And just 3 minutes behind Alistair, Matthew Sullivan has won the battle for third place.
Well, Matthew, first time in the Highland Cross and a third place finish.
Yeah.
Not half bad.
Very happy, yeah.
How was the race for you then?
It's tough. I had a fairly solid run, and then getting on the bike kind of felt okay, so pretty pleased.
Were you on your own for most of the bike strategy, or were you part of a group and break away?
No, there was myself and the guy finished fourth there. We kind of worked together a bit. I just got away in the last climb there just at the end. So.
Will you be back next year?
Definitely will.
But for the majority of people, the event is far from over. Back at the changeover point, there are still a number of racers yet to start on the 30-mile bike section.
You look a bit exhausted there.
Knackered. But we'll get the cycle done, and it's good fun.
Some of the competitors arrive at the changeover point looking really strong, and by the time they change over and leave here, they look absolutely exhausted. Here, I'll hold your bike up for you.
Right. There we go.
Okay.
I'll go now.
All right.
Oh, I will. Right. Once you push me out of there, thank you very much.
See ya.
The hill's always hard. It's you just plod up the hill. Once you're on the top, you just get going, maybe slowing the uphill bits. It's good fun. Although it's demoralising when all the bikes have gone and you know you're in the last few to get through.
30 miles away at the finish, Sandra Brett, the first woman at the halfway point, crosses the line in a very impressive time of 4 hours and 24 minutes. The race has clearly taken its toll, but Sandra is in for something of a surprise.
Congratulations, first back for the ladies, for the runners.
Was I?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No.
You didn't know that, yeah. So, well, we think you are. We didn't see anyone else, so at the moment we reckon that you are. So, you look to be wobbling a wee bit at the end. You're obviously working quite hard.
Well, I'm not a cyclist,
right.
And I just do a bit of running, but I hadn't trained properly for this.
Oh, you
I got the bike 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
I haven't ridden on a road bike really much. That's probably the longest distance I've done. When I got it, I fell off because I'm not used to the cleats.
But I think there's about 5 walkers in, girl walkers in, but you're the first lady runner. Seriously. And that's super impressive.
I'm never doing it again then.
It's super impressive you only got that bike 3 weeks ago. That's incredible. Is it any wonder you were a wee bit wobbly in the legs?
It's a very good bike. It's the gear, I would say. It's not me.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And for confirmation of those final results, Henry Blake was first back in a time of 3 hours, 37 minutes, 35 seconds. Alistair Thomas came in 3 minutes later, with Matthew Sullivan in third place with a time of 3 hours, 43 minutes, 56 seconds. Hugh McInnes squeezed into fourth place. And in the women's race, Rona Buchan came in a good second with a time of 4 hours, 27 minutes, 36 seconds. But beating her was Sandra Brett with that superb effort of 4 hours, 24 minutes, 43 seconds.
Well, that's it from the Highland Cross. Thanks very much for your company. Next month we're back with 4 kinds of hell at the Artemis Great Kintail Quadrathlon. Join us for that. Bye for now.